I shall
Well, I should say, welcome, all of you,
yes.
to and thank you for coming. It is an unaccustomed pleasure. I've not done anything like this before, ever, and welcome the patrons of this. It arrived yesterday, so
Yeah.
I'm still a bit hazy on a couple of lyrics, so
We're actually, funnily enough, it's a weird position to be in, but we're a little bit hazy on the songs, just because you go through this process of making a record. You write the song in its really basic form, but you try and keep it as basic as possible. And then you move on through this whole production process, and you get to the other end of it. And we sat down yesterday to go through these songs and thought, how do they go? Because all you can hear is tiny little bits of string lines, and you can hear the nuance and things. So
we call it microscoping.
Microscoping.
Yeah. So you pull back, and I'm just emerging from my period of, and it happens before the release of every record. You just wonder what the hell you've done. You think it's rubbish, and then it starts to rebalance itself, and being overly sensitive, I might say. Rushing past that, because obviously you don't want to hear if my negative opinions about what you have just paid for, and you're as responsible as I am. So first I want to say thank you to you. Thank you for the efforts that all of you have made to come here. Some of you have come an incredible distance. I'm deeply touched, really. I'm fascinated to meet. It's amazing how many relationships have begun and continued. Some of you I have met several times before. Some for the first time.
So the shape of what we're going to do, really the purpose of this is to play you the result of your pledging. It's to play you the new album. So we're not going to play it through. It would be a bit daft for us to play the whole album through like this and then play the whole album through again. It'd take hours. So we're not going to do that. We'll play little bits of songs where we think it's relevant, and just wanted to talk about the process that we went through. Thought you might find that interesting. Kind of how we wrote some of the songs, where we wrote them, where some of the ideas came from. So this isn't a gig. This very much isn't a gig. It's a preview of this. We'll play, as I say, play you little bits. Songs come in many different forms to many different writers. Some people write to a backing track. Some people, like my dad, who was a great songwriter, he wrote everything in his head, never played an instrument. Some songs take 15 or 20 years to be born. Some songs take as long to be born as it takes to play them. And there's two examples of that on this record, the beginning one and the end one. So we generally start with a guitar or two guitars, or in one case a piano, and a beautiful place.
It's nice, isn't it?
It is, yes.
I mean, they talk about getting away from it all in the country, but the phone is always ringing in the city, and in the modern life. I don't have a smartphone, but I see what happens to people that have smartphones.
You don't even have a dumb phone.
No, I have a pretty dumb phone.
Yeah.
But life at arm's length. I look at people, and no one is kind of where they are. They're somewhere else. They're thinking of. I mean, the phone is only turned on for me if my children have an emergency. The rest of the time. So we did tend to go away, and indeed we started in the Lake District, if I recall.
At Stevenson Ground, for which we thank Penny again.
Because it's a house. And, I don't know if you know the Lake District, but it is a rather magical 25 square miles of mountainous England. It's a real... it's a breath of fresh air for the soul. And we went there, and a number of things started to happen, including, if we skip to the first song, a song that's taken 15 years. Callum and I met in 1993 when I was at a crossroads, and I hadn't met a musician quite like him. And it went in it was a very mixed way for you. because I could see I was so distracted. I was really rather rude, and I pride myself in.
I got asked along by Martin Green, who's in the record, who actually played sax on
Sweetest
on
Smile,
Sweetest
Wonderful
Smile.
Life.
Great musician. And he said, it's this Colin, and he explained what it was, and he said, he's looking for a guitar player for a European tour. So I went along to what I thought was an audition. And I get to the end of the day, and it seemed to have gone well, and I'm going home, and Colin buggers off. And nobody actually told me whether I had the gig. He's never told me whether I've got this gig. So,
He's
guess
still
I'll
on
find out.
probation.
I'm still on probation. So are you, love.
I've realised that now. Yeah.
So we're skipping forward a bit. We'll proceed through it song by song. There'll be plenty of time for kind of any questions you have and stuff like that at the end.
But why would you persist with the song for 15 years? I guess, if I were you, I'd be wondering that myself. But it's because I actually think it was Callum that said it at the time. I had a rather convoluted demonstration recording, a demo as we call them, and I think it was Callum said, you know what, that's a top 10 single chorus. But obviously he didn't buy the rest of it. He thought,
It's dull.
and I tried to half a dozen times. I couldn't just throw it in the bin and walk away from it. I don't know if any of you have things in your life like that, but you just can't leave them behind. Finally, I sat down with Callum last year, and we started work on this, and it was not easy, but we ended up with this song called The Love Show. I don't know if you've...
I love the fact that you had to look at the title.
Well, no,
That was brilliant.
I was looking at the, I was thinking, is there anything that I've forgotten that was really key? And I don't suppose there is.
That half of it. So really what was wrong with the verse of this song structurally is it just felt a bit clunky. It was a bit kind of... It's all in sets of 4. So we actually kept the original tune and just changed all the chords and made it, frankly, weird. And we ended up with this song that's kind of weird and kind of went, don't know really whether it's going to work or not. But that was the process of this record. Just briefly, this record, we have to thank as well the great people that worked on it. Liam Bradley, the drummer, played with everyone from Van Morrison to us. Simon Edwards, bass player, was in the original lineup of Fairground Attraction, and everyone I think probably knows of our love for Bond themes, and he's actually the only member of the entire entourage that's actually been on a Bond theme. So Simon was fantastic, and the gift of Mikey Rowe, who's currently on tour with Noel Gallagher. He's a fantastic keyboard player, just great sonic.
Having done David Bowie last year.
Yeah.
I was sat with Dave.
You know how it is. And of course our producer Callum Malcolm, who Callum produced the Blue Nile albums, which we are huge fans of. He's the go-to man for Radio 3 for modern classical 20th century music. So he's got a great ear for dissonance. And as you'll hear with some of these songs, we ended up putting strings on 5 of them, and they are pretty out there. So we ended up meeting with Callum, getting drunk with him. And by this point, we'd had these songwriting sessions, and we had a meeting with him in the Lake District. He came down, we went through the songs, and he was brutal, like all good producers should be. He kind of said, I don't like that one, it's shite. Or that one's too long, get rid of that. And we had a glorious time editing the songs, basically making them shorter, which is good, cutting the fat off them, which is part of the process. Then we went to Rockfield, the legendary Rockfield where Bohemian Rhapsody was recorded, but
And
everything else. And that process these days of making a record is you're really capturing the drums and bass. You're doing the stuff that you can't do at home. Everything else has been done either in my studio or in Callum's studio up in North Berwick. We had sessions doing guitars at my studio up in North Berwick, and then we did the vocals up in North Berwick, got Liam back over, and me and Liam and Colin did backing vocals. And then Callum went away and edited it all. That's the other side of making a record these days, is that the producer then takes it all away and has their box and is working in a darkened room for 3 weeks, making it so, picking the best performances, basically. So that's really how the record came about. Is it
It does sound a bit like a Frankenstein's monster, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Kind of thing, but he was a tall guy, not without his Charm.
Who was?
The Monster. Franklin.
Yeah.
It was a bit strange because it's the fastest record I've ever made, but over the longest period of time. We began in September.
Yeah.
The week, and here we are. We only finished a few weeks ago. Well,
Yeah.
the lunatic that is Callum Malcolm. Sorry he couldn't be with us. I couldn't persuade him.
He's in Prague recording
He's
an
shy.
orchestra.
Yeah, he found
That's what he
something
does.
else to do. Yeah, but he wouldn't.
And he
Have,
hates
he wouldn't
doing
have done it anyway.
He wouldn't have liked it.
I know.
He wouldn't. He'd be.
But if you met him, you would have liked it.
He'd be in the loo crying, frankly.
Yeah.
He would. So this song, this is kind of where we end up. We'll just play a little bit of it, and then we'll play you the version, really, because.
May as well.
And again, this isn't a performance, really. It seems like a performance because you're all looking at me. But
It will be. You're going to play. I'm going to sing.
But really, when you're writing a song, you're intentionally trying not to make it a performance. You're trying to reduce it to its core elements, which are chords and top line. And if you can make it work like that, and it feels somehow satisfying, and you can forge a good song out of it, good tune, good shape, not crapping on too much, cutting all the fat off it. If you can make it work like that, then the next process of taking it into the studio, you're then building on something. You're building on great foundations. So intentionally, there's no electric guitars here. There's none of my pedal board and kind of meow sounds. There's none of that going on. It's just the chords, if I can remember them.
So with the synth.
We'll find out.
If I'd known, I might never have started on my own. Though that's where the rules are that get my heart to shake, that make my blood run hot, that make my heart flip over. Fall into the arms of one who loves you more than he can tell you, but knows where love goes, he may follow to a love show. If I'd known I was not what I once was, would I fall still for the mess to what leaves me? I've got much better uses. What made your thighs start aching? What made your blood run hot? What makes your heart flip over and over? Fall into the arms of one who loves you, but knows where love flows, he may follow.
So that's where we started with that, and it kind of de-squared. Sorry.
You clap when he throws the guitar away.
Well, you know.
Doesn't always work.
So I think we'd succeeded in making the verses more interesting. So that here's where Callum took it, and one of the persons I didn't thank was he found this string arranger called Ian Stevens, who is absolutely fabulous. And because a film composer, and because Callum has this whole thing about 20th century classical music and dissonance, he then wanted to make it even more squirrely and strange. And actually, we're perverse. So this is the first song on the album, and when the song finishes, it's got a minute or so long play out with the strings, and we loved it so much.
You will think that's too long.
But not when you've listened to it several times.
It's because it draws you into the next track. So
Love Show. Tell me if it's too loud or too quiet.
Too quiet.
Funny guy.
If I'd known